The villagers gathered in the dusty square as the afternoon sun burned over their heads. At the center stood Lila, a plump, shy girl with downcast eyes, clutching a small cloth bundle of her belongings. Her wealthy aunt, dressed in fine silks and dripping with gold jewelry, pointed a trembling, accusing finger at her. "She's a disgrace," the aunt spat, her voice ringing through the crowd. "Lazy, gluttonous, and ungrateful. Let her learn what real work means," the elders murmured among themselves, and soon one of them announced the verdict. Lila was to be given away to a poor farmer named Eli as punishment for shaming her family. Laughter rippled through the onlookers, cruel, mocking laughter that stabbed into Lila's heart. Some whispered that she wouldn't last a week, that the farmer would send her back or starve her until she begged for mercy. Her eyes welled with tears, but she bit her lip, refusing to let them see her cry. The farmer stepped forward, a tall man in worn clothes, his face weathered from years of sun and wind. He said nothing, only nodded once and extended his rough, calloused hand. No one noticed the quiet intelligence in his eyes, the way he studied people carefully. Lila hesitated before placing her trembling hand in his. Her aunt turned away, muttering, "Good riddance," as if she were casting away trash. The farmer led Lila toward an old wooden wagon at the edge of the square. Children followed, throwing pebbles and laughing, calling her names. She kept her eyes fixed on the ground, each step heavier than the last. The wagon creaked as it rolled out of the village, dust rising behind them like smoke from a dying fire. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Lila stared at the horizon, wondering what kind of life awaited her, whether she'd be worked to the bone or left to starve. The farmer finally spoke, his voice quiet but firm. "You'll be safe with me," he said without looking at her. His words surprised her. No one had ever promised her safety before. She glanced at him, trying to read his face, but his expression remained unreadable. As they passed through golden fields and crumbling fences, she noticed the faint scent of fresh hay and the soft hum of the wind through the grass. Something in the air felt strangely peaceful, almost kind. Still, she couldn't shake the fear sitting heavy in her chest. She had been unwanted for so long that kindness felt like a trick. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in red and gold, Lila wrapped her arms around her bundle and whispered to herself, "Maybe this is what I deserve." The farmer turned his head slightly, hearing her faint voice, and for a brief moment, a flicker of sadness crossed his face because he knew exactly how it felt to believe you were a punishment. The wagon creaked to a stop in front of a small farmhouse surrounded by wide fields and the scent of earth after rain. The house looked worn but tidy, its windows clean and the fence freshly painted. Lila climbed down slowly, clutching her bundle. Eli, the farmer, unhitched the horse in silence, his movements steady and calm. She expected him to bark orders, to make her sleep in the barn or scrub floors until her hands bled. Instead, he opened the door and said quietly, "This will be your room." Inside was a modest space, a wooden bed, a small chest, and a window that looked out onto the fields. It wasn't much, but it was clean. Lila stood there in disbelief. "You don't have to thank me," he said, sensing her confusion. "Just rest. Tomorrow we'll start early." Then he left her alone. That night Lila lay awake, listening to the sounds of the countryside, the wind brushing through the wheat, the soft hoot of an owl, and Eli's distant footsteps outside. There was something strange about this man. He spoke little, yet there was weight in every word. He seemed poor, his clothes patched, his boots worn, but his posture carried quiet strength. The next morning she awoke to the smell of bread baking. On the kitchen table sat a plate with food and a note, "Eat before the day starts." No one had ever cared if she ate before. She blinked back tears and obeyed, then stepped outside to find Eli already working. He showed her how to feed the animals, water the plants, and tend the hens. "Work with care, not hurry," he said. She expected scolding, but instead, he corrected her gently, patient even when she made mistakes. Over time, she began to notice small details that puzzled her. The barn's tools were all high quality, too fine for a poor man. The feed sacks bore foreign labels she didn't recognize. Sometimes strangers came by, men in clean shirts and fine boots, handing Eli envelopes or papers that he tucked away without a word. When Lila asked who they were, he only smiled faintly and said, "Suppliers." But suppliers for what? In the evenings, when the fields glowed gold and the crickets began to sing, she and Eli would sit outside in silence. The sky stretched endlessly above them, the air cool and still. Slowly, she began to feel a peace she hadn't known before. The cruel words of her aunt and the villagers faded, replaced by the quiet rhythm of farm life. Her body, once a target of ridicule, now felt strong from labor. For the first time, her laughter returned, soft at first, then bright and full. Eli would glance at her when she laughed, his eyes warm though he said nothing. One night, Lila woke to voices outside. Peeking through the curtain, she saw Eli speaking to two men beside a black car. The next morning, Lila woke to the sound of engines outside the farmhouse, loud, powerful ones unlike the usual creak of wagons or hum of tractors. She rushed to the window, her heart pounding, and froze. A line of sleek black SUVs stretched across the yard, their tinted windows gleaming in the sunlight. Men in crisp suits stepped out, carrying briefcases and folders, moving with precision and confidence. They greeted Eli with firm handshakes and a tone of respect that didn't match the way villagers usually spoke to him. "Good morning, Mr. Hayes," one of them said, and Lila's breath caught in her throat. "Mr. Hayes?" The name sounded formal, almost important. From her hidden spot behind the curtain, she watched Eli walk with them toward the barn. There was no trace of the humble farmer in his posture. Now he moved like someone used to command. Curiosity burned through her. She waited until they disappeared inside, then crept closer, her bare feet silent on the wooden porch. The barn door was slightly open. She peeked through the crack and saw maps, blueprints, and documents spread out on a large table. The men discussed land contracts, crop exports, and investments worth millions. Her head spun. She heard one man say, "The next shipment leaves for the city tomorrow." "The investors are thrilled," another handed Eli a thick folder stamped with gold lettering. "Your signature here, sir," he said. Eli signed calmly as though this was routine. Lila stepped back, her mind whirling. Everything she'd thought she knew about this man was wrong. When the cars finally left, the farm seemed too quiet. Eli found her sitting by the fence, staring at the fields with wide eyes. "You saw, didn't you?" he asked softly, a hint of amusement in his voice. Lila nodded, too stunned to speak. "You're not poor," she whispered finally. He smiled faintly, looking out at the horizon. "No," he said, "but sometimes it's better to live as if you are. People show their true faces when they think you have nothing." His words lingered in the air, heavy with meaning. Lila wanted to ask more, but something in his calm expression told her not to. That evening, as the sun dipped low, trucks began to roll in, hauling machinery, supplies, and workers who nodded respectfully to Eli. They started marking plots of land and measuring distances. Lila watched in awe as one of them erected a sign near the road. "Hayes Agricultural Holdings, Main Estate." Her heart raced. The poor farmer who'd taken her in as punishment was, in truth, one of the largest landowners in the region, perhaps the entire province. She remembered the villagers' laughter, the cruel words of her aunt, the pitying glances, and suddenly all of it felt meaningless. That night, as the estate glowed under floodlights and the hum of engines filled the air, Lila stood on the porch hugging herself. The man who had taken her when the world threw her away had been hiding. That night, the glow of the fire filled the farmhouse with a gentle warmth. Lila sat across from Eli at the wooden table, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea she could barely taste. The questions in her mind spun endlessly, but only one found its way out. Why did you take me?" Her voice was small, uncertain. Eli didn't answer right away. He leaned back, gazing into the fire as if searching for something in the flames. "Because I know what it's like to be judged by how you look," he said finally. "Years ago I had nothing. People laughed at me too, said I'd never make anything of myself. I worked until my hands bled, and when I succeeded, I learned something important. Kindness is rare. Judgment is cheap." He turned to her, his eyes calm but filled with quiet sorrow. "When they brought you to me, I saw myself in you. Not your body, not your fear, just someone the world had decided wasn't enough." Lila swallowed hard, tears blurring her vision. No one had ever spoken to her like that before. She had spent her whole life trying to shrink herself, to take up less space, to avoid the eyes that mocked her. But here, in this small farmhouse that wasn't really small at all, she was seen, truly seen, for the first time. In the days that followed, Eli began teaching her more than farm work. He showed her how to read financial ledgers, how to check shipments, how to negotiate prices. She learned fast, surprising even herself. The workers began to respect her, coming to her with questions and trusting her word. The girl who once trembled under cruel laughter now walked the fields with confidence, her laughter mingling with the wind. At night she often stood at the porch, staring at the endless land stretching before her. It still amazed her that this place, once her prison, had become her home. The shame that once weighed on her shoulders was gone, replaced by something she hadn't felt in years: dignity. Eli would sometimes join her there, silent but smiling, and in those moments, she understood that fate hadn't punished her at all. It had given her a second chance disguised as a lesson. Months passed, and the once quiet farmhouse had transformed into the bustling heart of a vast, thriving estate. Lila had changed too, no longer the timid girl who had arrived trembling with shame, but a woman who carried herself with calm strength and quiet pride. The workers respected her, the villagers spoke her name with awe, and the same people who once mocked her now tried to curry her favor. Yet she remained humble, remembering the girl who had once been cast aside like a burden. On the day of the estate's grand opening, the fields shimmered gold under the sun, and carriages filled with guests lined the path leading to the new main hall. Lila stood beside Eli, dressed in a soft emerald gown that caught the light, her hair braided with wildflowers from the fields she once worked with her own hands. The crowd fell silent when Eli raised a hand for attention. He spoke little as always, but his words carried weight. When people look at someone and see only weakness, they blind themselves to strength, he said, glancing at Lila. This woman came here when the world had already decided who she was. But she proved that worth is not given, it's earned. And it shines brightest when no one believes in you. Murmurs rippled through the audience, and Lila's eyes filled with tears as he turned to her, smiling. Meet my partner, Lila Hayes, the woman who helped me rebuild this land. Applause thundered across the courtyard. The same villagers who once sneered at her now clapped with genuine admiration. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in golden rose, Lila looked out over the endless fields, remembering the moment she first arrived here, broken, humiliated, unwanted. Now that same place stood as a symbol of her strength and rebirth. She turned to Eli, her heart swelling with gratitude and something deeper that words couldn't express. You changed my life, she whispered. He shook his head gently. No, Lila, he said. You changed it yourself. I just gave you a place to begin. And as the wind brushed through, the wheat and the stars began to appear. She finally understood sometimes life's greatest blessings come disguised as punishment, and sometimes the people who seem ordinary are the ones who carry the power to heal everything broken inside you.